There we go. So the title of this presentation is "The Power of Ethereum." I believe in the program it indicates the title was a different title, not chosen by me, myself, or I, and somewhat antithetical to a discussion about decentralization. So this is about the foundations of society. Blockchain is an exponential technology, one of many exponential technologies that's presently transforming society. Blockchain. So there are many different technologies that we've developed over thousands of years, financial technologies, legal technologies, medical, accounting, insurance, mechanical, electrical, informational. All of these sit on a foundation that's somewhat flimsy. So blockchain is going to firm up that foundation. We currently live in a society in which people construct the rule systems of our society, and top-down command and control systems essentially implement or enforce those rule systems. Sometimes they're enforced by monarchs, sometimes they're enforced by elected officials. In many cases, they're enforced well and properly. In some cases, they're enforced capriciously. We're moving into a world where, with respect to enforceable agreements, legally enforceable agreements with respect to the laws in our society, we're moving from subjective manual trust systems to automated guaranteed trust systems and guaranteed execution of contractual agreements and the laws of our nations. So the internet has been profound in transforming our society, but it's broken in a few different ways. It's broken with respect to security. Blockchain, because it's based on strong cryptography baked in all the way through, will enable us to transform that into a much more secure infrastructure, where every transaction against your infrastructure is strongly cryptographically authenticated and potentially granularly authorized, so that there will be no way to cheat these systems once they're matured and hardened. The internet is also broken because there was no initial identity construct. And so the businesses on the internet have evolved to essentially define an identity construct that is unhealthy. So they are owning your identity, they're owning aspects of your identity, they're monetizing those aspects, and they're not adequately securing those aspects in many different ways. And so we've seen a somewhat abusive, an unhealthy business model develop because there is no proper identity construct on the internet. Blockchain is a technology that will enable us to establish the root of our identity on the blockchain. It's a root that you can control fully. You'll be able to encrypt aspects of your identity, aspects of your communications, and control all those aspects securely from your side of the browser. You'll be able to granularly designate different aspects for disclosure in situations that you designate. And that's going to be a profoundly transformational technology to enable us to move from what we're calling Web 2 to the decentralized World Wide Web, Web 3. This technology is being realized by a few different companies. One of them is our company, Uport. Uport has developed an identity system that is currently used as a single sign-on for lots of different applications, but it's also recently been used in Brazil and now in Switzerland to enable citizens to access government services. And as of a couple weeks ago, they've announced that it will enable citizens to vote in government services. So the simplest view of blockchain is as a next-generation database infrastructure. It gets its trust characteristic from the fact that lots of different nodes are kept in sync on this network, and they are inspectable. The data is inspectable directly, and on Ethereum, the programs are inspectable directly so that we can be certain that no malicious subset of actors can improperly manipulate the data or the programs on such a system. So that creates a context in which rogue system administrators, corrupt CFOs, hackers can't get into a single system and change the data, the historical data of the system. These systems are mathematically virtually impossible to corrupt. So if you combine the greater security, if you combine the trustworthiness characteristic, and you realize that that is all built in a context of a peer-to-peer network, a radically decentralized, low barrier to entry market, essentially, you have a force for universal disintermediation. And so disintermediation, I'm being a little dramatic here. There are great roles for intermediaries. If intermediaries add value to a transaction, reduce costs, reduce frictions, but intermediaries tend to impose themselves into a transaction flow, and they increase the spread between how much value they extract versus how much they add. Blockchain essentially is going to be the perfect context for price discovery for the value of intermediation. We're going to see this apply in society going forward quite dramatically. Disintermediation on blockchain systems will enable us to build network business models that will enable content creators, resource providers, service providers to much more directly access their consumers. Sometimes there will be thin layers of intermediaries in the middle, but it should be we should be able to develop business situations where large monolithic entities in the music industry or the finance industry or the ride-sharing industry don't extract the bulk of the value in those ecosystems. Some examples of content creators being linked directly to their consumers. Ujo Music is a platform that's enabling artists to upload their music and consumers to acquire public performance, private performance, synchronization rights, derivative works rights directly from the artists. And so this is a situation where licenses are acquired in real time, payment is made in real time, and payment is distributed in real time to all the contributors to a piece of work. So instead of 70% of the value being sucked up by record companies and held for many, many months, artists can charge much less for their music and ultimately make more money for their music. Civil is a platform that's coming out very soon that will enable sustainable journalism. So it's a platform that many professional journalists are presently starting to use. They form newsrooms. The newsrooms focus on specific regions. They focus on specific topics. And there's a constitution for this whole system so that if the journalists in these newsrooms begin to betray the principles of the system, if they write fraudulent stories, if they link to data that is unsubstantiable, they could potentially lose their right to be on this network. On top of that platform, just as on top of the Ujo Music platform, there will be a social network where people can engage in discourse, and that will all be executed in a tokenized business model. Different kinds of services can be provided on these networks. We have projects that enable bounties on a network to bring many different people around the world with different skills into different projects to help those projects move faster. Resources are also going to be accessible in these network business models. So as I indicated before, we're moving from a Web 2.0 world to a Web 3.0 world, a decentralized World Wide Web. And that's going to involve different kinds of resources. So just as with the legacy economy, where we have energy resources and agricultural resources, metallic resources, wood, etc., construction resources, in the new decentralized information economy, the resources are going to be offered and paid for on these decentralized networks. So in addition to, let me back that up. So some of these resources include decentralized data storage resources, heavy compute resources, bandwidth resources, things like kilowatt hours. We're also doing projects that are tokenizing different aspects of the legacy economy, like fractionally tokenizing real estate and enabling people to purchase fractions of a house or fractions of a rental property. The decentralized web is a natural evolution of the internet protocols and the web protocols. We started with Web 1, which was static images and text. It was already pretty profoundly transformational for society. Web 2 added interactivity, e-commerce, mobile social, and transformed society by orders of magnitude over Web 1 and created orders of magnitude more value. Web 3 is just what we're embarking on, where many elements, things like money, identity, agreements, certificates, reputation, are about to be realizable in native digital form. So these are forms that in transactions can clear and settle in the instant of the transaction and shrink delays and remove frictions from the system. So this Web 3 context is going to be enormously more comprehensive. The World Wide Web essentially dealt with information, then it dealt with buying stuff. The decentralized World Wide Web is going to involve every element of society. Decentralized World Wide Web, Web 3, will look like networks like Ethereum, where you have trusted transactions, automated agreements, smart objects on a shared network infrastructure. But again, these other elements, decentralized storage, decentralized bandwidth, decentralized heavy compute. The next generation, essentially Web 4.0, is probably going to look very similar to Web 3, except in Web 3, it's mostly people and organizations that are engaging in transactions in shared infrastructure with one another and potentially with machines. Web 4 will incorporate essentially the machine economy, where you'll have the ability for bots, for smart software agents to access natively digital money, to enter into legally enforceable agreements, and to conduct transactions amongst themselves. So when is this all going to happen? It's happening now. It's happening incredibly quickly. It's coming at us at exponential speed, and it also feels like it's happening very slowly. We, in the blockchain space, are building hundreds or thousands of components that are all maturing at different paces. We're building different kinds of token systems, fungible tokens, non-fungible tokens, networks for atomic swapping of these tokens, decentralized exchanges, data feeds, oracles, data markets, smart metering, IoT systems, IoT data protocols, markets for those kinds of data, decentralized registries, naming services. It goes on and on. As all these different elements mature, smart people can bring them together. And these elements are useful and interesting in their own right. But as they all mature, they represent building blocks or components that engineers and entrepreneurs can use to put together more complicated, more powerful, more compelling systems. Another really interesting aspect of this technology is the Ethereum platform is essentially a computer, a world computer. It's a single executable space where we can all upload our programs. Our programs, if they're constructed properly, can speak very fluidly to one another, and there are tremendous synergies available when you do that sort of thing. So if I stand up a music industry network and enable artists to set up a tour and maybe sell ownership of that tour via a tokenized model to a bunch of their fans, and that all works just fine. Another project can come along and build, say, a parameterized set of insurance products, and that set of insurance products can not only increase the value of this tour if people associated with that music tour apply the insurance product, but potentially hundreds or thousands of other projects could instantly grow in value because this new insurance product was added to the network and it is now available. So companies like Uber, Lyft, Airbnb, TaskRabbit have taken us some ways down the road towards the sharing economy, but really they're just service aggregators. They are large intermediaries that are extracting a huge amount of the value of bringing resource providers to their consumers. I think we can do better. So Ethereum is a protocol-based open platform. On this protocol-based open platform for decentralized applications, you can build a standalone application, but you could also build an application that is also a protocol-based open platform. So we're seeing on Ethereum many standards being built for tokens and swap mechanisms, and some of these standards are taking the form of essentially networks where a protocol-based open platform suddenly becomes this shared resource that makes up a part of the stack that we can all use together and we can all trust because of the nature of blockchain systems. So we're building n-sided markets as these protocol-based open platforms. We're building them in the music industry and supply chain and longitudinal healthcare and a huge variety of other industries. And the beauty of these open networks is that many different actors can perform different roles on the network. And if the network itself gets valuable, the token that represents some of the logic that holds this network together can get more valuable. A few weeks ago, Director Bill Hinman of the SEC spoke about network business models, essentially, and the fact that if you construct a consumer utility token properly and you market it properly so that you're not selling it in bulk to speculators, then you can have this new sort of model, this new way of delivering services or products to consumers that is not really a company. It's not a company that is often in an adversarial relationship with a consumer, but it is a collective that creates value. And if the token representing the business logic of that collective ends up being in demand, then that can create lots of value for all the people who are contributing to that network. So we're moving from a world in which the technology that we build with forces us to build siloed walled garden systems. So it's essentially database technology that doesn't support trusted collaboration. We're moving to a world where the fundamental atomic unit of information technology systems will be collaborative. Moving to a world where sectors, industries, supply chains like value chains will be the way we seek to build systems. The Enterprise Ethereum Alliance is a group of around 600 companies right now in many different sectors. It was formed to enable all these companies to use Ethereum, to use an enterprise-friendly version of Ethereum without too much stress in rolling their own variations of the technology. But what happened because of the trustful nature of the technology is that these companies in many different industries got together to create working groups, to have discussions, and potentially to create specifications and to build shared infrastructure in industries like banking, insurance, supply chain, healthcare, legal, identity, advertising, automotive, telecom, etc. This technology is going to move us towards a much more collaborative infrastructure. So as we build out the decentralized World Wide Web, all the elements that constitute that industry, similar to the elements that constitute the agricultural industry or metals or energy, are going to need financial infrastructure. So we have cryptocurrencies, Ether's a crypto fuel or crypto commodities, decentralized storage, decentralized bandwidth, also have tokens that represent other crypto commodities. So we are seeing a world that is developing its own adjacent financial industry infrastructure. It's not very mature right now, but it is maturing quite rapidly. And it is enabling the democratization of investment, where people from around the world can support projects that they care about, and people around the world no longer need to move to capital. If they have a good idea, capital can come to them. So democratization and greater trust is, I think, going to be the major benefits of blockchain technology. Thank you.